The member for Indi.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Widespread COVID vaccination is crucial to keeping Australians safe. I represent a border community that suffered enormously from the New South Wales and Victorian border closures last year. The Prime Minister's recent comments about a vaccine passport for interstate travel have alarmed my constituents. Such a passport would impose extraordinary hardship on our community once again. Can the Prime Minister give an ironclad guarantee that his government will not require vaccine passports for interstate travel?
The Prime Minister has the call.
Mr Speaker, I thank the member for her question. The proposal that has been raised in the media, Mr Speaker, and I look forward to—
Members on my left.
I was responding to questions in the media about this matter, Mr Speaker, and I responded to those questions. A proposal will be discussed at the next meeting of National Cabinet. But let me be very clear. When I was in Western Australia, the first task was to ensure we continue with the process of vaccinating Australians, and I was pleased last week that was the first time we'd reached 500,000 in a week, 100,000 in a single day, Mr Speaker, and early this week we expect to be around over half on first doses of the population over 70, Mr Speaker, and we welcome that and we will continue to press on. But, Mr Speaker, the proposal we're talking about is not that someone would require a passport to get from one state to another. Not at all, Mr Speaker, not at all. The proposal actually was put to me by the President of the AMA when I was in Western Australia, and I was meeting with him at the time, and he suggested to me, Mr Speaker, that in the event that states
members on my left
in place border restrictions like the member would have experienced between Victoria and New South Wales, that had states put those in place, then it would be very helpful that if people who had been fully vaccinated would be exempt from those restrictions and would be able to move across the borders where, in the extreme circumstances where border restrictions were put in place, that they would be able to move freely across those borders. Now, I would have hoped that that would be a good suggestion, particularly for those living in border communities where they had been fully vaccinated, and in the rather extreme situation, if border arrangements were put in place by state governments, not by the federal government, but if it was the state government putting in place a border restriction, then it was suggested to me, Mr Speaker, that
Has the Prime Minister concluded his answer? Prime Minister's concluded his answer. The Prime Minister's concluded his answer. The member for Bass.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. Will the Treasurer remind the House how the Morrison government's economic plan continues to generate more jobs for all Australians, especially young people and those living in rural and regional areas throughout Australia? Is the Treasurer aware of any alternative policies?
The Treasurer has the call.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for Bass for her question. The former Mayor of Georgetown, a farmer, Mr Speaker, and a very strong advocate for the people of Bass. Now, the Prime Minister and I had the opportunity to go and join the member for Bass at Hillwood Berries recently in the member's electorate, and to meet with the Dorner family, a family-run business, employs 45 people that are expanding their 40-hectare berry farm to over 50 hectares with the advantage of the immediate expensing provisions that we put in the budget. And it's a project that they said will help create more jobs and that they wouldn't have undertaken for up to another 2 years but for that immediate expensing provision. Now, Mr Speaker, the economic plan for Australia to create more jobs was laid out in the budget just a couple of weeks ago. And that was an economic plan that has already seen 500,000 jobs being created since last October's budget, and Australia being the first of any major advanced economy in the world to see more people employed today than they were at the start of the pandemic. And that plan includes tax cuts for more than 10 million Australian families. That plan includes immediate expensing provisions to allow businesses to write off new plant, equipment and machinery. That plan also includes a 10-year, $110 billion infrastructure pipeline. That plan also includes $2.7 billion for 170,000 new apprentices. That plan will help create another 250,000 jobs, Mr Speaker. And we saw the unemployment rate come down to 5.5%, even with the end of JobKeeper. It showed the resilience in the Australian labour market, with 33,800 new full-time jobs being created. But while we on this side of the House had faith in the resilience and strength of the labour market and the ability to end JobKeeper, which was an emergency payment, the other side of politics, Mr Speaker, those on the other side of the House wanted to keep extending that emergency spending measure. This is what the member for Rankin said using his crystal ball. Cutting JobKeeper will have diabolical consequences for workers and small businesses, and he said the jobs that people rely on to feed their loved ones, Mr Speaker. The member for Rankin thought there would be famine across Australia with the end of JobKeeper, Mr Speaker. Then you had the Leader of the Opposition, who said the end of JobKeeper was the only support that was keeping the economic roof from crashing down, Mr Speaker. Well, the only thing that came crashing down with the end of JobKeeper was the Leader of the Opposition's economic credibility, or whatever he thought he had, Mr Speaker. The reality was it was an emergency payment. It helped save millions of Australian jobs, but it had to come to an end, and we held firm and brought it to an end.